This is Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. We are joined today by Dr. Jill Adler-Moore. She is a professor of microbiology at Cal Poly Pomona. You have been at that institution since 1974, seen it grow up, to say the least. And as part of your time there, you became very involved in research. Before we talk about what you believe are the benefits of research, give us a sense of your journey, because you developed a drug that has really changed the face of treating certain diseases.
Yes, and I think my love of research came in when I was a PhD. And during that time, my lab was located in the medical mycology lab for the New York hospital.
There you have it.
Yeah, and the people would come in there and talk to my professor and say, oh, these patients, I think they have these terrible fungal infections infecting their whole body. And the only drug we have is really, really toxic. And what can we do? And that always stayed in the back of my mind. And so when I came to Cal Poly, and I was looking for some research projects, and I was really interested in the biotechnology industry.
Which was nascent then.
Very
nascent.
nascent.
There was nothing, I didn't even know what biotech meant, let alone now, back in 1974.
Well, it was later, it was around 1980, 1981. It was still very much in the beginning. And so I had this idea, and somebody came and gave a seminar at the university about taking toxic cancer drugs and putting them into a special delivery system that would reduce the toxicity. And so I thought, can't we do this with this antifungal drug? And so I came up with this idea. I approached this small company, which was called Vestar at the time, and they believed me. They thought it was a good idea, and I then worked with engineers, I worked with chemists, I worked with physicists, and we developed this drug that now, since it's been approved, it finally got approved in 1989, and it has been approved in over 50 countries throughout the world.
It's called Ambystoma.
It's called Ambystoma.
And it has saved lives, changed lives, made lives better. What's interesting, though, is that I remember that people were taking a certain drug for heart, and they noticed hair growth, and that became Propecia.
Yes.
And so that kind of happened with you, but with something much more important.
Yes, so we developed this for an antifungal drug for people who had immunocompromised immune systems. And so then somebody said, well, I think we could use this for this other infection, which is a parasite infection, which is rampant in the underdeveloped countries. And the disease is called leishmaniasis. And it affects about 500,000 people a year. And we did find with preclinical studies and clinical studies that one dose of the drug would cure the infection.
Cure
the infection.
One dose.
One dose.
I'm not even sure what to say. It's one thing when you have to deliver multiple doses, and that can be very challenging in the developing world. If one dose will do it, how many lives have you saved?
Thousands.
How does that make you feel? I mean, you're Dr. Jill Adler-Moore from, I think, New York?
Are you from Originally, New Jersey,
a nice girl from New Jersey, New York has saved countless lives.
You know, one time I was giving a lecture over in Europe, and it was with the company Gilead that I work with now. And this gentleman came up to me and he said, I want to thank you for saving my son's life.
You saved his son's life?
I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, my family went down to the south of France for a holiday. We came back. My son had this really bad infection. Nobody knew it was. And finally, they realized they got it from the sandflies. It was this leishmaniasis. And we gave him this drug, and it saved his life. So when something like that happens, there's just nothing you can say. But I have to say one thing, and that is that when you develop a drug, you never do it by yourself. It's always a team effort.
And let's talk about that, because you've taken that to heart. And you have decided, given your strong and deep affiliation with Cal Poly Pomona, that you wanted to make sure that that team environment permeates all aspects of education. You started the biotech major at Cal Poly Pomona, and you have been instrumental in trying to guarantee that an education at your institution not only includes traditional academics, but a research element as well.
Absolutely.
Please talk us through that.
So one of the things we did was to institute the biotechnology major, because I think our students needed to understand that when they go out in the real world, they're going to work with engineers, they're going to work with writers, they're going to work with chemists, they're going to work with physicists, and together you're going to create something. And so, and how important research is in that whole environment. And one of the things that people find over and over again is that if you can get the students involved in research, then the percentage of those students that will graduate is much, much better. Once
Really?
Yes.
Why?
Well, because they have a hands-on experience and they own it. There's ownership. So if you do your own research project, there's ownership to it. When you take a class, you're just kind of learning things and answering questions. And so directed toward that, I'm very committed to getting the underrepresented minorities in our country involved in education and in research.
And sadly, one of the underrepresented minorities in our country as it relates to science is a majority of our country women.
Yes.
We have more women and men in this country, and they're underrepresented in the sciences.
Well, and actually, you can imagine that when I was getting educated.
Honestly, how many PhD candidates were there when you were getting?
Practically nobody. There was no one. And when I came to Cal Poly, I was like one of 3 out of females out of a class of faculty of 30, and it was that way for maybe 20 years. And so I felt very strongly that I wanted to help women, and particularly women in the underrepresented groups, given that these individuals have no one to guide them. They don't have anybody to say to them, yes, you can do it. You have the potential. You can actually make this commitment. And it's been every single one of our students. It's sponsored by National Institutes of Health.
It meaning?
This program for the underrepresented
RISE,
students.
is it called RISE?
It's called RISE. And that program is specifically directed to women and men who come from backgrounds Hispanic, African American, American Indian, Pacific Islanders, and any individual who comes from a financially challenged
socioeconomic
background.
challenges.
Yes. And if you listen to the stories from each one of these individuals, it's amazing.
My concern in this era is that funding for research oftentimes will come through the federal government, and it appears that the current federal administration seems to be less interested in funding science and research. Is that a fair assessment?
I think that's a very fair assessment. And one of the reasons I got so involved in the biotechnology industry is because I knew this a long time ago.
Knew this meaning?
I knew that I can't really depend just on the federal government.
I understand.
And so I felt that getting involved with industry and working with them and doing research with them and getting my students involved with the research with this industry, one would give them a really good idea of what the real world is like, and also it was a better source of funding.
Right. So wise, prescient. At the same time, what are you doing, what is the institution doing in light of the apparent threats to funding? Because I presume industry can do a good amount, but we still need, I presume, government support.
We definitely need government support. And though I do encourage our faculty to try to find new places to support their research. But we all went to the Science March, of course.
Right. Oh, did you?
Yes.
Okay.
And so that's very, very important to us. And I think that we work together. One of the things that we do is we help each other in writing grants.
Right.
We help each other mentoring one another. And particularly in my particular situation, because I've had so much experience, I wind up mentoring not only the students, but also a lot of the faculty and helping them write competitive grants.
Her name is Dr. Jill Adler-Moore. She is a microbiology professor at Cal Poly Pomona. I'm Brad Pomerance. It's Local Edition.